Bookcase TV is brought to you in part by Digital Film Academy.
Do you know the difference between a thriller and a mystery? Probably not. It's all about the audience and the reader. In a mystery, the main character always knows more than the reader. This is why you will keep on reading to know what the character knows. In the thriller and the suspense novel, it's flipped. The reader knows more than main characters, and is always a step ahead. That's what we call in postmodern theory the ironic drama. Now you have to ask me the second question. How come do we have more thriller writers than mystery writers? It's a very, very strange question because it supposes something we don't know, we can't see. What would that be? Well, for example, that in the chaos of life, of modern life, of ruthlessness of big cities, we want to create order where there's none. That would imply that, yes, we'll give the reader the chance to piece together the mystery or the crime before the main character has a chance to do so. We are going to meet the masters of the thriller genre who are going to explain to us why they write thrillers. And of course, we sent our favorite journalists to interview them. I was at your panel a couple of days ago you gave, and I was struck. Let me do a parenthesis here. I always found like there's two types of writers, you know. There's writers who can just write stories, detective fictions, and then there was always a type, and there's way less of them, who try to add a bigger dimension to life, asking the big questions. And I was struck by how much you insisted on that point, and what are we doing here, or who are you, who am I?
There's got to be unanswered questions that keep bringing you back. So they are the larger than life ones. They're not like who did it, you know, in terms of a murder. That's a one story
of
question.
Course, yeah, it's linear stories.
And so you build that in, you know, and you build in some of your own questions, and it can create a ongoing, you know, quest to find out more about Harry Bosch. And if it happens to me as the writer, I think it's got to happen to the reader. And, you know, that's that rule. What happens in writing happens in reading is with me all the time. And so if I ever hit a point where I'm tired of Harry Bosch or it feels static or stale, then that's it, you know, because it's going to feel that way to the reader.
Do you feel like life is an endless journey investigation?
Oh yeah, I mean, who doesn't? I mean, do you know
people,
everything already?
No, I don't, but
sure
I'm asking
don't.
you.
Yeah. So I don't, Harry doesn't, Mickey doesn't. So yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that's you know, the underpinnings of really good storytelling when you're aware of that.
Do you find like the thriller, the investigation process, is a way to make sense of the chaotic world?
Oh yeah, I mean that's one of the basic things I think that bring people in as readers.
Yeah.
Is that it is a strange, crazy, sometimes or maybe always chaotic world out there that you want to try to make sense of. And you know, when you have a character who's going down this path and picking up pieces of puzzles and carrying it with them and eventually going to put all these together, there's something reassuring about that. And so that is one of the aspects of why people write these stories and why people read them.
Yeah. The writing process, you say, like sometimes just before finishing, a couple of weeks before finishing a novel, you know the story for the next one. There's no outline, I believe. I mean, I don't feel like you will write an outline. You probably write about the day and have a sense of the story, where it's going. It's more mysterious process for you.
Yeah, it's definitely mysterious. I mean,
Okay.
I've over 20 years I've written, and as far as process, it's changed, and it's.
Okay.
I think I've covered everything. I mean, I used to have a full-time job, so I was writing through the middle of the night, and then I went through a period of time where I was like a 9-to-5 type guy. I've kind of changed that, where I just get up really early. I'm usually writing when I get into a book, you know, get writing around 4 o'clock in the morning, and a 4 to lunchtime is a great day for me. But usually, what happens when you get going and get momentum, it carries you well past that.
Right now, you don't outline at all. How do you work it now?
You know, and I say this is what I'm going to do, and I'll write the first chapter, and then I'll look at it and see how it goes. I finished the book a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still going through the editing, but I think I took one day off, and then I wrote the first chapter of my next book, and then I stopped, and I went back into editing The Gods of Guilt, and now I'm going to go back into the story. But the first few chapters is a feeling out process. It's really, are you saying, was I right? Is this a story I can go the distance with? And most often it is. I usually don't abandon the project after I've written 2 or 3 chapters. I usually know
really?
by
So it does happen that sometimes you just walk away from a project.
a few times I've done that, or I'll say this is a short story.
I was going to ask you, you find yourself being more selective on the story choices because you have to go the distance for a year or 2 years with that book. Do you have themes, for example? You feel like there's I'm going to be mystical, like you are. The stream of life carries you to a direction you can almost can't prevent it, but you feel like you have to write about it.
I don't know. I will contradict myself. I think I'm more of a more craftsman-like about it than thinking like the stream of life will carry me to the story. It's like once I get it, then I start, hammering it around in my head, and then I start writing, and then we see where it goes. And it's more, get the words down on the page type thing, not like sit back and hope the guys will bring me to it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But let's talk about more the practical life now. So what's The Gods of Guilt, the big book you've written? Very big book.
The Gods of Guilt refers to a jury that Mickey Holler got a murder case. It's a case where he has a defendant that is not acceptable in society. He's basically a digital pimp, somebody who sets up prostitution and so forth. So he's an unsympathetic client charged of murder, and Mickey has to deal with the fact that he's unsympathetic, but I'm pretty sure he didn't commit this murder. And he goes off to the case, and he has to convince a jury, the Gods of Guilt, that this guy is not a good guy in our society, but he should not be found guilty if he didn't commit this crime.
So what's the theme of it? Is it sort of a forgiveness, or
there's
latitude for the pariahs of societies? Or?
Well, that's very insightful. That is, I would say the theme is about guilt and forgiveness, about being able to leave guilt behind, about transitioning in your life, because Mickey's going through a lot of this stuff himself. And as hopefully you find in all these kind of books, that the main plot, if you will, is mirrored in the character's inner thoughts and feelings.
And thank you for being on Bookcase TV, sir.
Thanks for having me.
And the most recent is Buried Secrets.
Right.
Is it out in paperback yet? Or?
It's not in paperback.
Okay, because it's about a couple of years old, right?
Right.
So Paranoia comes out in film. It's an adaptation.
Right, exactly.
Congratulations, because that's a tough one to pull in these days.
Well,
right?
I feel like I've lucked out. I mean, this is my second movie for one of my books. The thing is, Paranoia had been in development since before actually the book was published. The book was published in 2004.
So you saw the concept or an option?
The CEO of Gaumont loved the book Paranoia, had read it in French, and he contacted me and my agent saying, are the rights available? And at that point it was available.
Yeah.
Well, then they sold the rights to another studio in the U.S. The producer, a woman named Alexandra Milchan, was dogged to make this thing happen.
Let me ask you about the screenplay. Did you have any saying in it?
No, I wasn't asked to do the screenplay, and I wasn't really interested.
So you didn't get a double check? You only got one check?
Only got one check, yeah, right.
You bring a very interesting aspect of filmmaking people don't know. When you're a writer in the film business, you're the bottom rung.
It's true.
You get crushed by everyone, and
It's
you have
true.
no say. And then when you are a thriller writer, actually a book, you can hold you own all the rights.
Exactly, exactly
and you're
right.
the boss.
It's complete autonomy.
That's right.
When you write a book, you're the boss.
Yeah.
And any single change in any of my books, it's not going to happen unless I approve it.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have that kind of power in Hollywood. In TV, writers do have that kind of power, but not in Hollywood. So the producers hold all the power.
Okay. Let's talk about Paranoia itself.
Yeah.
You've done Russian studies, I believe, right?
Yes, I did Russian
you
studies.
probably grew up a little bit under the Cold War.
Yes. Like a lot of other people who spoke Russian and studied Russian studies, I was recruited to CIA, but chose not to do it. But I decided it would be more interesting to write a novel about spies rather than being one. And I wrote a book called The Moscow Club, which was a sort of a post-Cold War thriller. It was really a thriller about the end of the Cold War and the collapse of empire. Paranoia has nothing to do with Russia. Paranoia takes place in an American company.
Yeah, we're talking about the culture of Paranoia. That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Right, the culture of Paranoia.
So I know you won't give us the title of the new book. Can you tell us at least the theme of it? Or?
It's about all of my books are about regular people who get into some sort of get over their heads in something or the other. And this is a story about a dad. It's really a story about a guy who loves his daughter, and because of of a friendship of his daughter's, the father gets in deep trouble. So it takes place in Boston. It's sort of based on an aspect of my life, that is having a teenage daughter.
You say you're the dad as well, you know.
Right, exactly.
Right,
and I believe that thrillers should be about recognizable situations. They should be about things that anyone can plug into, can understand.
Universal stories.
Yeah, I think so. It makes it more interesting.
Sure. Now you talk about your wanting to be a spy, and I know you have a deep respect and love for James McCain. You know, where was the crossover when you decided maybe you were a failed spy or you were not very interested in that, and then move on to become a writer?
I learned something early on in the business, which was that working for an agency like the CIA or the NSA, it is a corporate job. You have to be an organization man. And I think I was not that good at playing well with others. I think that
more individualistic?
Yeah, I think I thought of myself as more being and more creative. I mean, there's nothing I like more than sitting down and writing my new book. I just sort of, I just get so blissed out doing it. Whereas when you're working for like the CIA or the NSA, there's so much bureaucracy. There's so much organizational politics that people waste their time on, that I began to realize that really wasn't a good fit for me. That really wasn't the sort of life I wanted to have.
It's a good discovery. It's a great discovery.
It is. It's an important discovery. And also, I got to know a lot of people in the intelligence community who I have huge respect for. I mean, some close friends of mine are pretty high up in the intelligence community, and they're smart, and they're thoughtful, and we have arguments. We talk a lot about politics, and I sort of feel that it's reassuring to me as a regular citizen to realize that some of the people who are making these big decisions in the CIA and the NSA are such thoughtful people.
Joseph Finder was with us. Paranoia, the film's coming up
August 16th.
August 16th, or even sooner than I thought.
Right.
And I hope I get free tickets. Thank you very much, Joseph. And thank you for being on Bookcase here again.
Great talking with you.
Thank you. Do you want to see how easily I can solve a crime? Yes. Give me the 2054 at the Empire State, please. Yes, I'm going to roll. So you are a doctor by trade?
I
correct?
am.
You still practice, correct?
I do, in a manner of speaking. I have my boards in internal medicine and in ER, and I love being a doctor, and I never wanted to be a writer. And then one day I decided, just for fun, I decided to try and write a book. It was a book about nurses and mercy killing. For my first book, I literally made a list of all the things that could go wrong, and then I made them happen to the poor main character in the book. It was just a great way to start, and all of a sudden I had two careers that I loved. And so I did them both for a long time. And then when my youngest was born, I stopped working in the emergency ward full-time and started working in a program that takes care of sick doctors. And that's really what I do now.
Is it too intense, the ER?
No, I love it. I love not knowing what's going to come through the door next.
Yeah, talking about not knowing what's happening next, it's a bit like thriller writing, isn't it?
Hopefully I sort of know what's going to happen next by the time I actually write it.
For someone who never set up to become a writer, you surely did well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And you managed to keep the momentum going.
I had some help along the way in that my first book was such a strong idea that my initial editor at Bantam was willing to help me slowly to learn how to write, to learn what point of view was, to learn tricks of the trade of writing.
Yeah. Do you find the deductive process or reasoning process of medicine has helped you to solve mysteries?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so, very much so, and it's especially easy for me because I'm writing within the field of medicine. Although my last 8 or so books, I've expanded. So I'm writing in medicine and in politics. So I'm working on a book right now called Resistant. And in that book, the doctor, who's also the hero of this book, talks a lot about process and how he uses it in his life, but especially in medicine.
What kind of process, to be precise?
What do you do? What do you do when you see somebody for the first time and they're sick? Take your time if you can. Be prepared. Talk to the people. Make sure you don't focus in too quickly on their problem, because you want to, all of a sudden, if somebody says, oh yeah, I've been peeing a lot the last month and I'm really tired, you go, oh my God, you're just getting diabetes. And you've got chest pain. You know, I'm going to pay attention to it.
To come back to the novel, it's the same character again, or is it different?
Yes,
the standalone?
When you switch and decide you want an ongoing character, then everything changes. And the character becomes a detective. That's different. That means the plot comes to the character.
That's right, yeah.
Instead of the character running into the plot by mistake almost.
And making the wrong choices.
Making a wrong choice. So in the new books, with the ongoing characters, such as Dr. Lou Welcome in Political Suicide, he might be working in the ER, and in comes a woman covered in huge blue lumps all over her body, and he has no idea what it is, and he becomes determined to find out what those lumps are. So he goes out after the lumps. Let's just say that's a raw example, but that's the way I'm writing now. My old books, the standalones, the doctor would be the one to get the lumps.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
Big difference.
Sure.
Figure out why you're dying of those lumps, or you're out of the world.
The picture, yeah.
And so it's an interesting project for me to learn how to write the ongoing character as opposed to the standalone. When I was starting as a writer, my first editor told me, she said, you know what your problem is? Writing villains. And you know why? Because you're too nice. You don't believe that evil exists for its own sake. I changed when she told me that, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to try and at least create absolute evil, even if I don't really believe in it. But now I believe in it.
Okay, so what's the timeline for the book, the new book? What's the title? The Resistance, right?
The Resistant.
Okay, Resistant.
Yes, is the title. It's going to be out probably in June.
June of 2014. In the meantime,
this is a good book, though.
Political Suicide should be coming out in paperback, right?
It's coming out in paperback soon.
Okay, so how soon?
I would think in the spring.
Okay.
Again.
The Michael Connelly, Political Suicide.
The what-if question of that book is, what if a chemical was developed that could eliminate the ability to fear?
Fear. Okay, I love the premise.
It's a book about fear.
Yes, I've been asking for my call like 10 minutes ago for 2054 at the Empire State, please. Another 5 minutes? So your Ophelia Cut topic is it's a tough topic because they impact everyone, families and the victims.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the idea was incubating how for you?
Well, because I just became exposed to more young adults. One of the things that I was really struck by, and have been, is the whole loss of privacy issue, the whole way that things don't mean the same to them as they do to me. And my kids are great, they're fantastic kids, they just live in a different world. Everybody knows what everybody's doing, you know, there's no privacy, basically. And my guy got convicted, got charged with rape, and I decided to make it a kind of an interesting, almost a jurisdictional issue about the older people and the cops and everybody else. They're all into investigating and normal criminal procedures and looking into the reliability of eyewitness testimony. And on the other hand, you have all of this stuff that's even once removed from eyewitness testimony. And there's this whole connection and communication thing that goes on that's kind of mysterious.
So the subject is rape, yeah?
Well, the subject is rape.
It's a rape.
One of these women she goes out with this guy that she barely knows, of course, and they hook up, She doesn't like the guy, and so she tries to dump him. But she's like a babe and a half, and he's not into being dumped by her. He comes and kind of begs her to get back with him and blah, 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 and it turns out that she's in the hospital. She calls her mother from the hospital, and she said, I slipped running for my bus, running home, and that's the first thing we see of it. And her father, who's got some experience, he's been a Marine, he knows what fighting looks like, and he said, this didn't really happen the way you said it did it? He then goes and confronts the young man. And then a few weeks after that, the young man goes back to try to get back at the father. The father becomes the suspect in the rape trial. To watch him kind of implode and go back off the wagon and, run into trouble with alcohol and then to get arrested, it's a fairly powerful story.
So you like to torture him, basically.
He's
How do you find your story? I'm sure you must have hundreds of stories coming through your head.
Well, I'm so fortunate because I've been on contract for, the last 20 years.
Okay.
So every June, basically, I have to finish a book.
Okay.
So it's become a kind of a normal routine for me that in September I sit down and I write an outline. And I really just make the outline up out of whole cloth. In the old days, I used to write 200-page outlines.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Then I realized that, number one, I didn't want to do that. It was just like writing a book. And number two, I decided it's better to write the book as you're writing the book. It's better not to have this preconceived notion of what the whole book's going to be. Just give me a theme, give me a plot, give me something small to start with, and I write up about the equivalent of one chapter in a book. And I tell the story of what's going to be in the book. And I hand it in, and usually they say go, and then I write it.
They have to submit.
They have to say yes, but they've never said no.
Okay.
All right.
Ophelia, is there a Shakespeare connection there, or is...
I'm not going to tell you.
Why not?
One of the things I love about this book is the title. I have loved the title.
I know, it's a great title.
It's a great title. When the title came to me, I was writing it literally in the third draft. I'd already written it, twice, gone through the whole book. And I'm just kind of, playing with it at the end, trying to make everything as good as it can be. And I'm going through this literally the last bit of dialogue in the whole book. And this one person mentions this Ophelia Cut in a context that it brought the entire theme, plot, everything in the book together, and it just wiped me out. I mean, I started crying. I'm sitting there going, this is so great. I love this story. So anyway, it was just great.
Hopefully she won't be the unfortunate daughter of some wacko kings over there,
no.
And with a tragic outcome.
No, we don't. Well, I'm not going to talk about it.
Okay, we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, John Lescroart.
Yes.
Yeah, the French way.
Exactly.
Mr. Croquant. We wish you all the best to Ophelia Cut.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being on Bookcase TV. Let me show you what we have for this week, Pick of the Week. The first book is 7 for Secret, Lyndsay Faye. You may remember her from Gotham. Well, this is about the creation of the police department in New York. Timothy Wilder, bartender turned cop, goes into a new investigation. It's beautifully detailed and brilliantly written. And if you want to know how the police force in New York came to be, despite the social classes and the Irish mafia and all different type of people immigrating to the state, especially New York, it is a must-read. 7 for Secret, Lyndsay Faye. Next book about putting order in your house, it's To the Point, The Silent Wife by A.S.A. Harrison. I believe Mrs. Harrison just passed away, but before she passed away, she wrote this magnificent novel. It's a small novel about a couple living in Chicago, in an affluent suburb of Chicago. She is the killer, he is a victim, and what's interesting about the novel, this novel is written in two voices, one from the wife and one from the husband, and going back and forth between the two. Extremely compelling and great read, The Silent Wife by A.S.A. Harrison. The next one is Crime of Privilege, Walter Walker. The story takes place on Cape Cod. It's about a district attorney called George Beckett, who toils away in the basement doing nothing and comes across an unresolved murder in a golf club after years before. He has his own problem and he decides he's going to solve the problem of this murder that has never been solved. he digs into the past, the more he discovers that people are full of secrets, and he ends up traveling all over the world to solve it, and maybe he will solve it, but like everyone else, finding the secrets of a murder and finding the murderer is also a way for him to achieve order in his own redemption. And the last book of the week is Sandstorm by Allan L. Lee. You may know him if you live in Detroit because he's a Fox News anchor there. But this is a story of a CIA agent, Nora Mosa, who, after learning that her boss has been killed, has to run away. And as she runs away, relying on a person she knows, her ex-lover, who is also a CIA agent, discovers conspiracy that will make the Iranian nuclear program happening. Of course, there's a conspiracy between big corporations that wants to see that happening. The book is action-packed and it's a great read. Sandstorm by Allan L. Lee, his first novel. Hello, Hong Kong? Yes, give me the 2054 for the Empire State, please. The Empire State Building? Hi, my name is Frederic Colier.
No, you're Frank Debonair.